Mr. Cramer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary General, for being here, for your service. I want to go back to something that Senator Hirono mentioned in her questioning. She credited the Obama administration, along with some other allies, with curbing Iran's nuclear capabilities. As I recall, it licensed their aspirations, and serious problem. We're still living with some of that. And by the way, when it comes to deterrence, and I appreciate you making this point, and I agree with my colleague from Alaska, Senator Sullivan, on this. Deterrence is definitely made up of weapons, but it is more of a reputation than it is a capability. The capability is only good if you have earned the reputation. With that in mind, and speaking of Iran and current situation, maybe, General, I could ask you this. If Fordo was destroyed, demolished, if all of the nuclear capabilities that Iran has today were wiped out, would the war be shortened or lengthened? Realizing that's not the only factor, of course.
Yes, sir. And of course I can't split that hair given the complexities of the war that's ongoing there. So I'd rather not comment on one particular part. You know, the Israelis are, as reported in the open source press, are making great progress. So I think I'll just leave it at that, Senator.
I understand and appreciate that. Can you then highlight for me that as we talk about deterrence and reputation, I'm sitting here thinking about the air superiority that Israel has accomplished over Iran. I'd like to have you speak to that, and then speak perhaps to the lack of air superiority that Russia's had over Ukraine, and the difference in those two wars. And my point being, how important is air superiority in the current fights and in our future fights?
Well, sir, we could spend hours talking about the advocacy of air power. I think the freedom of maneuver that it creates is a great example of that. If you look at the two theaters right now with the Israeli Air Force striking at will at this point over Iran, juxtaposed with the challenges that we're having with a frozen forward line of troops in Europe, is a great case study of it. You know, the great thinkers, air power thinkers, are looking at the advancement in technologies from both theaters, the advancement of first-person view drones and things like that. And I think folks are going to have to think clearly about what does the future of air superiority look like, and how does it evolve to make sure that we're protecting those essential teammates that are on the ground fighting in order to prevent frozen flots, forward lines of troops in the future.
I appreciate that. Secretary Hegseth, there's been some discussion, certainly in your opening statements and then with a couple of the questions related to base defense. And this would be something both of you could speak to, but I'd like to start with you, Secretary. Obviously, we've seen some pretty spectacular displays of the ability to go deep, covertly deep within the enemy's territory and take out some pretty significant assets, both in Russia and in Iran. A lot of us fear that we're vulnerable as well. You spoke very briefly, or referenced, I think, in response to one of Senator Gillibrand's questions about the importance of policy. So when we talk about the United States itself and our bases here in the country, policy is a bigger challenge than weapons, to be honest. But what about responsibility? In other words, I think there's some confusion over is there a service, is there a particular institution that's responsible for base security and base defense, or is it up to the individual services to protect their own bases? Can you help straighten that out for me?
Senator, you're right to ask the question. We met on this very topic 2 days ago, because you're right, we've already made initial efforts, but I liken it to the effort that was made around IEDs in Iraq and Afghanistan, where it couldn't be a service-only response. It needed to be across the joint force. It needed to be immediate, and the capabilities had to be prepared to adapt in real time to adjustments the enemy is making. And you saw that in things that could, in counter IED technology. We need the same type of effort in counter UAS. not just forward deployed, because right now you do it with what you have, but also at home considering the authority. So that is something the department is doing in real time.
If you have a second. I guess that's it. I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Cramer.